Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the October 2nd, 2012 edition of CityViews. I'm Sam Slaiby, your host this evening. My co-host, Tim Driscoll, is not feeling up to par, and he won't be with us this evening. We hope he feels better. And he's got some issues he needs to deal with, and we wish him well with those issues. So, Tim, if you're listening, again, we wish you well, and if you want to call in, please call in. It's a rainy day in Torrington. It's a rainy evening. I guess tomorrow is supposed to start clearing up, and we're headed for a fairly nice Columbus Day weekend. No one's quite explained to me why the traditional Columbus Day weekend, Columbus Day is October 12th, which falls not this coming Friday, but a week from next Friday, and yet we're having this coming weekend off and celebrating Columbus Day on that Monday. We could just easily have a long weekend. The weekend is traditionally Columbus Day, so I don't understand it, but at any rate, this coming weekend we celebrate the Columbus Day weekend. And for those of you who have the Monday off, I hope you enjoy a nice long weekend. The leaves are starting to turn, but they're nowhere near peak yet. My lawn is still fairly sparse of leaves, so but it promises to be a beautiful autumn. Enjoy it. All the almanacs say we're going to have a hard winter, so enjoy the autumn while you have it. My guest this evening is Dan Seger, who is a Democratic candidate for the 8th Senatorial District, which many of you may not know, but actually encompasses a lot of Torrington. And I'm going to be talking about that in a while with Dan. But in the meantime, I just want to welcome Dan to the program.
Thank you very much, Sam. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's great to have you here. Before we get into a lot of nuts and bolts of what's going on in the election, tell us a little bit about you. What's your background, Dan?
Okay, well, I've lived in the district here, which, like you said, includes Torrington for about 40 years. I actually lived in Torrington back in the late 70s and into the 80s, and I had my first two daughters here. Bought my first house here in Torrington, and I love Torrington. It's a great city. I've moved on to New Hartford, and also now I live in Canton. My background is basically a business background and manufacturing. I started as a machinist back in right out of high school, pretty much, and I worked my way up through a company, and I started with a company in Canton called Perry Technology Corporation back in the 80s, and at that time the company was about a 10-person gear and spline manufacturing company there, producing aerospace parts. And I worked with the owner. We grew that business to what it is today, which is a 110-person company that serves customers globally. It's a state-of-the-art machining company, machining aerospace and precision aircraft parts in New Hartford. It employs, like I said, 110 people throughout the district, and what I was responsible for there was to do the technical negotiations and contract negotiations to bring the business into the company. So I've got experience pretty much globally, and my history is bringing business into our district. I also run a small website and graphic design company now out of my home. I retired from my plant manager position at that manufacturing company to run my small business, which is, like I said, website and graphic design in Canton. So basically what I want to do is to bring my business experience to Hartford, to the General Assembly. I truly believe that we need to look at economic development across our entire state, and especially across our district. We need to bring sustainable businesses back to our district. We need to create jobs. We need to create a future for our children and grandchildren that allows them to earn a living wage in their towns that they grew up in. So that's the reason I'm running. I've got 3 daughters that are now grown. One lives here in Torrington with her family. My grandson just started this year, I'm pretty sure at the Torrington School in kindergarten. So I've got a vested interest in making sure that our communities are viable going forward. So I just want to do the right thing, work across the aisle for with whoever's got the best idea, so that the future generations can have good opportunities just like we have.
Well, of course, one of the big issues that's on everybody's mind who pays any attention to what's going on around here is that for the past couple of decades, Connecticut seems to be bleeding jobs, and we're having a difficult time creating new jobs,
Right.
high tech or low tech, but good paying jobs that people can support their families on.
Right.
What do you see right now as I'm a businessman. I want to set up a small factory somewheres. I'm looking at Connecticut. Why would I pick Connecticut now over some other location?
Well, I guess right now, the governor and the General Assembly have tried over the last few years to make Connecticut more business friendly. They've put
I hear that word a lot.
Yeah, you do.
And
and it's, they've put programs in place like the First 5 program, the Next 5 program, which basically have given tax incentives and grants and money to larger companies to bring in people and to expand their businesses within the state. But last year there was a 2011 jobs bill, which directly benefits small businesses by helping them, businesses of 100 or less employees, by giving them tax credits for hiring new employees in the event that they may be nervous about the economy. They may be nervous about expanding their business. It also includes a portion that allows companies to get to get grants for small business loans to help them expand in the district. I mean, those are the sorts of things at the state level that are being done right now to help business and small business to expand in our state. I think, personally, what I've heard talking to people, because I've been out talking to a lot of small businesses, I go out door knocking every day, as part of the campaign and part of trying to hear what people's concerns are. And I hear that maybe a thing we should look at is what we might call the paperclip tax, especially affecting small businesses like mom and pop shops that have 2 or 3 or 4 employees, or maybe even one-person shops where they have to go through and inventory all the paper clips and pencils and basically devalue them over time so that the town can assess them on their property. If we were to try to make that more friendly to businesses by putting a limitation on the amount or value that we make them report, I think that would help, because what I'm hearing is that small businesses aren't really worried about the tax they pay on that. It's the time that it takes them, the non-revenue producing time that it takes.
I can tell you, we've got a small law firm.
Yeah.
And we don't really have a lot.
Yeah.
But the time it takes me to prepare the paperwork
Right.
to pay our local property tax,
Yeah.
is 4 times as costly as the actual tax we pay.
Sure. Absolutely.
And I mean, those are the kind of things that I hear from people who are already in business in Connecticut,
Right.
who find it onerous, and it's good. And those are the things I hear that prevent other business from doing. The property tax structure that we have,
Right.
the cost of utilities in Connecticut always seems to be a big issue.
It is.
And now I'm hearing, this is one thing that I've only started hearing in the last couple of years, that we don't have a trained workforce sufficient for some of the new industries that are looking to open. I mean, those are the 3 biggies. Those are the 3 biggies that I hear.
Yeah.
What kinds of steps would you propose to try to address these kinds of issues?
Well, I've always thought that businesses working together with school systems was a great idea. When I worked at Perry Technology, we would work with local school systems, and one comes to mind in Canton, the Canton school system. The trade shop teacher over there, his name was Daryl Zorden. He would routinely come to meet with the management team at our company to talk about what the latest technologies were. What were we doing in the machining aspects? What were we doing in our engineering departments? What were the latest softwares that we were using? CAD modeling and CNC programming and things like that. He would then go back and adjust his curriculum, and ultimately what he would do is bring his students back through the shop to show them what was going on. I mean, we're not training the workforce per se, but we're giving them an idea of what's out there so that they can better prepare themselves, and I think that that's important.
Callers, our telephone number, if you want to call in tonight, we would encourage you to call in tonight, is 860-361-9985. So if you have a question of Mr. Seger, we would certainly welcome that this evening. And in the meantime, last year on this program, and I hope to continue some more this year.
Yeah.
We ran a series of programs on Oliver Wolcott Technical School here in Torrington.
Sure.
And they have a tremendously wide variety of skills they teach there, and in their freshman year, students who come in get exposed to all those areas before they're allowed to make a final choice. And I and many other people who I've heard from are very impressed with that program. It seems to turn out people who actually are ready to go to work when they get out of school.
Right.
Or at least be in a position where they're trainable to do skilled jobs. One of the things that, and I've been a big supporter of Governor Malloy, but one of the things that he did that really scared me a little bit was one of the first things when he became governor is hint at trying to cut back on the amount of money that we're investing in our technical schools.
Yeah.
And what do you think about that?
Well, I think that we need to put money back in our classrooms, and especially trust in our teachers, but that's a different subject. But definitely the technical schools need to be funded appropriately. I would agree with that 100%. And I think we need to look at programs like the apprenticeship machinist program that the state of Connecticut used to have years ago. And maybe they still have it. I just haven't heard about it. But we would always use that program to bring folks in, to bring students into the company from Oliver Wolcott to work under the mentorship of journeyman machinists, and it was an official apprenticeship program where the students would actually accrue hours under the tutelage of a machinist that had already achieved their journeyman's license, and that produced some very expert machinists who went on to be engineers and went on to be programmers and things like that. So I think that definitely we need to fund, but we also need to look at what sort of programs are we implementing in our school system. Is there a way we can implement a program for on the technology side, let's say these days, not just the machining and manufacturing side, but technology and IT, some of the computer sciences.
Have a call. Good evening, caller. Welcome to CityViews.
Hello.
Hello. Good evening. Welcome to CityViews.
I can't hear you. What?
If you have your TV in the background, can you shut the TV off?
Yes, sure.
Okay, sure.
Okay, good.
Welcome to CityViews. You have a question for Dan?
No, what I wanted to make is an observation, and that is the fact that if we're going to get manufacturing back in the United States, and if we don't, then I have no idea what people are going to do to make a living, If we're going to do that, we've got to have trained people that understand how to do some of the complicated jobs in the trades, and we don't really have a good mechanism for doing that. So we need a far more rigorous training program to develop technical skills on the part of high school students and those beyond high school, so that we have skilled tradespeople available.
Well, I think that's what Dan and I were discussing. What do you think about that, Dan?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. You know, and not just the tradespeople, but you know, the manufacturing industry has become much more technologically advanced than it was in prior years. But you know, there's still a place for the tool makers, because we always are going to need fixtures and complex tooling that has to be handcrafted. And I think that that preserving those skill sets is paramount in our country, and if we're not careful, it's going to be lost. So I think you're absolutely correct. We need to promote training, and we need to figure out ways to ensure that the craft isn't lost over time.
And I agree with you. You're right. The type of skill sets that are needed in a manufacturing plant today, an effective manufacturing plant, requires some demanding training in order to be able to perform that type of function. And without it, we won't be able to grow manufacturing in the U.S.
Are you in the manufacturing field, sir?
Yeah, I own a plant down in Fairfield.
And what, I mean, specifically, what kind of training are you looking for in employees right now? What kind of skills?
Well, it's most of it involves having computer skills that are associated with the operation of machinery.
Okay. So basically, I mean, again, I'm of the generation who is not as familiar with the capabilities of computers as a lot of the younger generations and people in your business, I'm sure are.
Sure.
Are there courses out there that are more or less general industrial type of courses for people who are going to be involved with computers, that you can use that as a launching pad to be training in a more specific industry?
Well, I think it would definitely be helpful, because it would provide some of the attributes that you need to be able to apply those in a manufacturing environment.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you know, for somebody like me, it's even harder to find what that need is. So it's important to have you know, people who are representing us who are up on that. And apparently, with your kind of a background, and this gentleman certainly has a kind of a background that you would know. That may be a problem, getting people who are actually in this industry involved in making the decisions as to what we're going to be doing in our education system.
I mean, to this gentleman's point, you know, the machining and manufacturing industry has changed so much over the last 20 years alone. It's almost like, you know, to operate and program some of these higher state-of-the-art complex CNC computerized numerical control machines, you know, you almost need to have an engineering degree or something in some cases. So, you know, there are specialized schools out there. A lot of the machine tool manufacturers that produce these complex machines will offer programming classes. There's specific softwares that are utilized and so forth. So, you know, there's a lot of different avenues to get the training. But, you know, to try to train somebody in a college classroom setting is difficult for this industry, and I think that's his point.
Okay, very good. Well, we've talked about you know, some of the negatives. What's the positive thing that's going to bring people here to Connecticut?
The positive things, well, like I said, you know, we need to give businesses the tools that they need to put Connecticut back to work, you know. And what are those tools? Well, you know, they're incentives that we have, like the 2011 jobs bill. They're economic development at the municipal level, perhaps through state programs that help municipalities with paid, let's say, economic development coordinators that come into the city and work with the local people there that know their town and that, you know, can help. If you look at towns like Simsbury, for example, has recently gone through what they call their charrette, you know, a few years back, and you know, this isn't pertaining to manufacturing, but there's a little bit of manufacturing in Simsbury. But you know, they reconstructed their downtown area. They added kind of a road that goes parallel to the main drag. They've put in the Performing Arts Center, which is a large shell for the Hartford Symphony comes over and has shows over there, and they have local events there. And basically, the Greenway Trail, the bike trail that goes right through town. I know that Torrington recently had approval for that as well. So, you know, things like that really you got to bring people into the city area, into the town center, to promote economic development, and I think that's key.
Of course, Torrington has been talking about economic redevelopment and downtown redevelopment in particular for at least 30 years.
Yeah.
And it seems to me there's, every once in a while, we get a flood of money that's available for planning. We get to hire planners to come in. We get the consultants to come in. We pay for Potemkin Village designs. Lots of people have some great ideas. And there's always seems to be some money available for that.
Right.
But when it comes to actual time, but to actually get the money to do the projects,
Right.
seems to be a never-ending process. It's like infinity. You keep on getting closer and closer, but it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And looking at a state project, the courthouse.
Yeah.
Well, that courthouse was approved years ago.
Right. Wasn't that
And
in
they're moving at a
2007?
centipede, and they're moving and they're moving at a centipede's pace. The state bought the property. I think they bought it 2 years ago. We heard there was going to be construction in the springtime, this past spring, and we've been hearing that for years. And here it's fall. Nothing's been happening, and I think it's things like that that cause people to lose faith in the ability of government to perform its functions.
Yeah. You know, I know, I'm not sure what's happening in Torrington at the municipal level, but I know at the state level, I know Michelle Cook and Roberta Willis have been both working hard to promote Torrington and to help with the school systems, to get grants for the downtown area, and to work with UConn, I guess, as well. Roberta's been working with them, but the problem is, I think, that you know, there's two houses in the state. You've got the Senate and you've got the House of Representatives. Torrington has always had no support for their state reps in the Senate because they've always had opposing parties in that position. So I think that if I
not only that, but Torrington has never had its own state senator.
That's true. That's true. It's divided into 2 and maybe even 3 districts now. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely it's got the 2. The 8th district is pretty much the east half of town,
which is the district you're running for.
Which is the district I'm running for.
And we share the 8th district with who else? What are
the other towns?
Yeah.
You've got New Hartford, Norfolk, Colebrook, Heartland, a small piece of Harwinton, Canton, Avon, Simsbury, a small piece of Granby.
And I mean,
and Barkhamsted.
Yeah, well, I mean, for you running for office as well as for the people who you represent, or who you may be representing, we hope you're representing.
Right.
That's really a diverse district.
It's very diverse.
With diverse issues.
Right.
And do any of those towns really feel they're adequately represented in a system like that?
I know that the Farmington Valley towns feel like they're represented fairly well because that's pretty much been the current incumbent's stronghold area. I'm not sure.
It must be because we never see him in Torrington.
Okay, I'm not sure what he's done out here. But. Most people in the city of Torrington, no matter where they live, think Andrew Rohrbach is their state senator. Okay.
Half of them are right.
Correct. Right.
And because, again, Andrew and I are different parties, but he's got a strong presence here. People know he is. He shows up to things.
Right.
Kevin Wittos, we don't even see him come election time, which is unusual. Usually you'd at least see the candidate come up during the election time and campaign.
Sure.
His predecessor, Senator Hurley, who also never showed up in Torrington, at least made a few token appearances around election time. I don't even think Kevin Wittos does that. And I think part of it's because he doesn't really feel that Torrington is important is being elected.
Well, I think that regardless of which towns are important to being elected, I think that all the towns in the district have value, and especially Torrington, even though the 8th district is only half of Torrington. I look at Torrington as being entirely in the 8th district, because what happens in the west part of Torrington is going to affect the east part of Torrington. Torrington is a city that has been great and vital to the northwest part of the state of Connecticut. It's had great manufacturing. It's had a great manufacturing base. It's got a great group of people here, and it's an anchor city for the northwest part of Connecticut. And I think that, like I said, the whole of Torrington needs to be revitalized, let's say, but get some manufacturing back in here, because what's going to happen is, if Torrington becomes vibrant, all the surrounding towns, of course, are going to benefit. Everyone's going to benefit. It's a win-win situation. And,
well, I couldn't agree more with you about that, but I don't know why it is, but always it's not just the Senate seats. It's the House of Representatives. It's even our state representatives. We always seem to be the one that's gerrymandered. Roberta Willis is a great state rep. Only has a very small part of Torrington now.
Right.
I guess we're now sharing a part of, or Torrington is being shared with another part of northwest Connecticut that includes Colebrook and Winsted and in other areas, another small part in the eastern part.
Right.
And then we do have the 64th, which is the only district that is completely within the city of Torrington.
Okay.
But again, every time the legislators, both Republicans and Democrats, decide they're going to draw a map, Torrington seems to be the place where they that all the boundaries meet, and we get cut up. And I don't know what we can do about that in the future. But part of the complaints I heard during the primaries where people didn't have a clue where they were supposed to show up to vote.
Right.
And I mean, the city, I think, tried its best to let people know that. They sent out postcards. The papers were marginally helpful in all this.
Right.
But I know of many people who showed up to vote in both parties in the primaries, and they were told they were at the wrong polling place.
Yeah.
And they're responsible. I've been coming to this polling place for years.
Right.
And there's, we're sorry, you're going to have to go somewhere. You're going to have to go somewhere else, and they got to somewhere else, and they found out even that somewhere else is divided into different districts.
Right.
If you're on this side, if you come from this side from this street, you go to this machine, you go to this street, you go to that. You cannot blame people for being confused.
Sure.
In that situation, and I don't know. It just seems to me to make for a messy process. It makes it for us, but as a person who's running for office, it can't be very helpful to you either.
Definitely not, because there's a lot of folks that may get frustrated and say, you know what, I'm not going to bother to vote. But and that's bad. People should be able to exercise their right to vote, and anybody that wants to call the Democratic headquarters down in Torrington, which is at the old Dick's restaurant down there on East Main Street, are more than welcome to stop in, to call. We'll be happy to tell you exactly where your polling place is based on your address.
And do you have the number off the top of your head?
I don't have the number off the top of my head.
But now, will there be rides supplied on Election Day?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, if anybody needs a ride to a polling place, our campaign and the other campaigns in Torrington would be happy to facilitate a ride for them. If anyone needs absentee ballots, the ballots will be coming out on October 5th, at the end of this week. We'd be happy to help them obtain absentee ballots in the event they're going to be out of town on November 6th.
Now, do you know which polling places the people who are going to be voting for the 8th district will have to go to?
Yeah, it's, what is it, Co Park, the middle school up on, what is it, Torringford Street. I believe the Armory.
The Armory. I think City Hall is one of them too.
And City Hall, right. Those are for the 8th district. It doesn't make much sense as to why those are the polling places for the 8th district, because, you know, the 8th district in some cases doesn't overlap those polling places, but...
well, again, I haven't looked at the map lately, but I mean, one of the things that used to really amaze me was when I was on the housing authority, two of the housing authority properties were Curry Terrace and Laurel Acres.
Okay.
And they both literally bordered Torrington School. And they're elderly and handicapped in both of those facilities. They always had to go downtown to the City Hall to vote. Now, I'm not sure if that situation has been rectified in the latest situation, but it just seemed amazingly poor planning to me.
Right. It doesn't seem like there was any thought given to it.
No. But,
and similarly to the redistricting, you know, of Torrington, and like you said, the jagged lines. You know, you'll have people that you know, live on one side of the street, they're in the 8th district, and the other side of the street, they're in the 30th district. So it's very confusing to people.
One of the other things about Connecticut that's changed over the years is I can remember in the 60s when I was going to school in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Whenever I'd come back to Connecticut, or from wherever I was coming back into Connecticut, I was always very proud of the roads. That you could almost tell the difference. You didn't really need a sign to tell you where the border was.
Right.
As soon as you were on the best roads, you were in Connecticut.
Sure.
That's no longer the case.
Now it's a reverse of that.
It's a reverse of that.
Right.
What can we do to turn that around?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. I mean, infrastructure and the highway system and the bridges and everything that goes along with that is a big part of the budget, and thankfully we can get some federal funding for that. But you know, I believe that we need to look at re-implementing toll roads again. And you know, I know a lot of people say, well, you know, the toll roads caused those accidents back in the 80s. They were a big problem. You know, we had the tractor trailer slamming into folks that were waiting to pay their tolls. But you know, that was the 80s. We're into 2012, going into 2013 now. We've got new technologies out there that help with that issue. We've got the Easy Pass program. You know, new toll booth setups now, and people that are commuters that utilize these stretches of roads on a daily basis could implement the Easy Pass and drive right through at almost highway speeds. And of course, safety-wise now, they have pull-offs to the side where the folks that pay cash would go and pay. You know, I know it's something that a lot of people don't like to hear, but if you look at what's going on in our neighboring states, they have paid toll roads like the Mass Turnpike, and I think that the people that use those roads all the time could benefit from the enhancement that they would see from the road condition after paying those tolls, and that could bring in revenue of, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars that could help our infrastructure without having to add to our spending that is such a concern these days.
Yeah, I always really believed that the impetus to removing the toll roads in Connecticut were that many people in Fairfield County were commuting back and forth to New York, didn't want to pay the tolls.
Right.
And it was not so much a matter of safety as it was a matter of politics.
Right.
And it's bad politics.
Yeah.
The roads really need to be maintained.
Sure.
It costs money.
Right.
And I never thought that the brunt of that money should come from people who live all over Connecticut who may not utilize the road.
Yeah, sure, you've got people that live, you know, in Torrington, New Hartford, Barkhampstead, other parts of, you know, rural parts of the state of Connecticut.
And when they use the road, they should pay for it. But I really think the people who use those superhighways that need that kind of maintenance, that type of surveillance, should be paying for it. And it happens in every other state around us, except it doesn't happen in Connecticut. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, we need to, as a state, look at what are we doing wrong and what are the other states doing right. You know, why is everybody going to Massachusetts to buy their gas, to buy their food, to buy their alcohol, whatever it may be. They're going across state borders. We're losing revenue, you know. As a Democrat, to say maybe we need to look at the taxes on goods, and maybe by lowering it we can actually improve the revenues. You know? I mean, it's
let's take liquor for instance.
Yeah.
Anybody coming from the south or from the west who wants to go to Cape Cod, they want to go to Maine, they want to go to New Hampshire, they want to Vermont, unless they're really going out of their way, have to pass through Connecticut.
That's right.
And when they pass through Connecticut, they're either going on 84, 95, or 91.
Sure.
Okay.
Right.
Now, we have the highest alcohol tax in the Northeast. I don't know about the rest of the.
Right. Could very well be.
It could very well be in the whole country. I don't know.
Right.
But it seems to me that instead of being the highest, we were the lowest. And not just for people on a toll route, but we could keep the private, the private package, but just lower the prices.
Yeah.
And maybe the state could lease out portions on the borders of these highways for package stores, and private industry could do it. We don't need a state liquor store to do it.
Sure.
I think we'd reap millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in extra revenues just by doing that.
Absolutely.
And anybody who tries to tell me that, well, the rationale behind that is we don't want to encourage drinking in Connecticut, they're going to have to explain to me why it was so important to expand the hours of package stores, make it available in supermarkets, and make people and have supermarkets open on Sundays to sell alcohol.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
It seems to me we're really missing the boat.
Yeah.
On a lot of these taxes that we are so insistent on raising when everybody else around us is lowering it, making millions off of us.
And not just the liquor, but look at the gas.
Oh, gas.
Gas, I mean, our state is small enough so that somebody that was passing through it could potentially say, you know what, I'm waiting until I get up into Massachusetts to put any gas in my car. They fill up before they get into the state,
I have to confess,
and they go up there.
I do it.
And they fill up there because it's that much cheaper. You can see wild variations in the price of gas, not only within the state of Connecticut, but obviously if you get out of the state, it's much lower.
Well, we had to pass through Massachusetts on our way to Vermont 2 weeks ago, and the gas station I filled up in West Springfield was like 20 cents a gallon less than over the line in Granby.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah. And it used to be just the opposite. It used to be you didn't want to buy anything in Massachusetts. But at any rate, well, a lot of these issues that have become partisan issues really need to have a bipartisan analysis.
Sure.
And do you see Connecticut, the legislature in Connecticut, being as partisan as other legislatures are throughout the country?
I don't. I see that the bipartisanship is getting better. Let's put it that way. I think that we really need to work together going forward. I think that to take a look at the 2011 jobs bill. That was pretty much a nonpartisan bill that was pushed through by.
We mentioned that a couple of times. Why don't you give us a little bit about what that really entailed?
Yeah, well, that was the bill that was created to promote small businesses, to help them with tax credits, to help them to expand in our state, to be part of the Connecticut's more business-friendly idea, and it was specifically geared to small businesses. And I don't know if I mentioned or not, but it had a portion that would help small farms, by giving them up to $20,000 in grant money to expand unused farmland on their property so that they could start cultivating that and producing from that as well. So that there was, quite a few good incentives in there. And that bill was basically supported by by Democrats and Republicans, and it was voted through. I think the vote was something like 34 in favor and one not in favor, and that was our incumbent state senator, Kevin Whitco's, voted against that bill. I'm not sure what his rationale was behind that, but
well, maybe something
that was you know, a good example of what the General Assembly has started to look like and started to work together to solve problems in our state. And I think that that's something that we really need to concentrate on. Let's put aside our partisanship and let's sit down at the table and say, hey, what's going to work for the state? How are we going to, reduce spending and increase revenue so that we can bridge the gap? How are we going to address the achievement gaps we have in education? How are we going to make Connecticut more business friendly? How are we going to attract business? How are we going to revitalize our infrastructure? These are things that we need to get to the bottom of and work together to find solutions for.
Again, I'll remind our callers, our telephone number is 860-361-9985, and we welcome your calls this evening. And you did mention something a little while ago about the 2011 bill was also helpful to farms in Connecticut.
Right.
And again, that's an industry that's been leaving Connecticut.
Sure.
Mostly because land values have become so high in Connecticut that it's very difficult for farmers to justify farming on such expensive land. But beyond that, there's also, Connecticut is very, very heavy on regulations as well.
Sure.
There are a lot of things that used to be available in Connecticut for farmers as help support farmers that aren't available any longer. But I've also noticed in the last several years that farmers markets seem to be making a big comeback.
Absolutely.
Farmers markets are all over the state.
Right.
Does that signal to you that there may be a possibility that small farms are coming back, that there's a future for them in Connecticut?
Well, running for office, I get to see how many farmers markets there really are, because I go out and I try to meet with people. And of course, with 11 towns in the district, I get to see how many people are at these farmers markets, and they have really turned around. They're very well attended. There's lots of local farms that I see. So if that's any indication of what's going on with the farming industry on a local level, I would have to say that it is making a comeback. I know that there are some people in Canton that lease farmland right there on Route 44 on the Bristol's farm. They actually come in and lease that property to utilize it to grow vegetables and to have their own farm stand set up right there. So it's got to be a viable industry.
And one of the issues small farmers, especially in Connecticut, have had is trying to compete with the big commercial farms and big commercial dairies, especially the ones out west now, the ones overseas as well. If you go to your local supermarket and you actually pay attention, you might be amazed at how much of our food is being imported now from overseas. But there's great consternation across the country right now because if the present tax bill is allowed to expire, a lot of these farm subsidies are also going to expire, and they're predicting that the price of milk is going to go through the roof. The price of bacon, for instance, is going to go through the roof. And of course that should be a concern of everybody because we all have to eat and we all have to pay for food.
Sure.
On the other hand, a lot of the small farmers who probably don't get the benefit of a lot of these subsidies, that the large commercial farms who might benefit from that, because it would make their products more competitive. And I don't know how much you've had a chance to take a look at this, but have you gotten any feedback from farmers as to things you could do to help out the farming industry in Connecticut?
I haven't really gotten much feedback from farmers, to be quite honest with you. I know that when you talk about federal subsidies for farms, Those are pretty much farms that I think that the lion's share of federal subsidies goes to farms that are family owned. And you'll find that some of these huge conglomerate commercial farms are actually family owned still, because then they qualify for huge federal subsidies. So you know, I think they're detracting quite a bit from the subsidies that smaller farms could be getting.
We've talked about the tax structure in Connecticut as it affects businesses.
Yeah.
We haven't talked all that much about tax structure as it affects people who are working for a salary,
right?
Or people who are in small businesses,
right?
And again, the property tax seems to be a big issue to everybody,
right?
But what kind of tax reform do you see coming our way that might, you know, we've got to increase our revenues, but we also can't make it make the tax system so onerous that people can no longer afford to live here. Do you see any areas in our tax system that can be tweaked to help address those issues?
Well, you know, I mean, if you look at what Governor Malloy has done over the last several years, he's looked at programs at the state level that have you know, redundancies, consolidating specific programs to try to reduce spending, to try to hold the tax levels down. You know, and it's true. We cannot, you know, fund our budget on the backs of working class people in the state of Connecticut. It's just not a viable solution. So again, it brings me back to, you know, the economic development piece, where we really need to, you know, bring businesses that are sustainable and attract businesses that are sustainable into the state of Connecticut, so that we can improve that tax base to help increase our revenue. And of course, you know, we talked about the taxes on goods. Could that change possibly help increase our revenue? You know, there's a lot of different things that could help increase revenue. On the spending side, I think we just need to work together on a cooperative basis in Hartford, work together with the governor to make sure that we're all on the same page, and try to you know, pare down redundancy and pare down, let's say, trim the fat in some cases. You know, we just need to be more fiscally responsible as far as some of the state programs go.
Well, years ago, the Connecticut Supreme Court ruled that the way we were raising money to fund our schools was unconstitutional, because we were relying too much on local property taxes.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't see that there's been very much change in that situation. I mean, we still rely very heavily on local property taxes to fund our local education. Is there a way out of that, or is they at least alleviate that situation?
Well, you know, with the education reform bill that was passed this year, I think that's a good start. Obviously, there's parts of it that need to be fixed still. I know Michelle Cook and Roberta Willis worked hard on that, and that's gone through. But if we look at the educational cost-sharing grant funding money, for example, that's currently distributed to different municipalities, is based on a state per capita income standard, let's say, that's compared to wealth or income standards and needs of specific municipalities and towns. And obviously the difference in those two numbers will distribute the funds differently to more needy towns. But the problem with the formula is that it's outdated and it needs to be revised. The formula that calculates the per capita state income level is based on a year 2000 census that also includes prison populations as well as college dormitory populations. So it, you know, unfairly dilutes that per capita income earning level. Not to mention it's 12 years old, so if we were to look at ways to revise that so that year over year it's revised based on actual income tax numbers that come in, our funding would automatically go up, because I would assume that our per capita income levels would rise over a 12-year period, even though we've been in a recessionary time. But comparatively, I think that everyone would benefit from that. You know, the governor has increased funding for ECS by $50 million this year, and he also cut $79 million out of the state spending this year in an emergency measure, just to talk about our spending thing a little bit more. But the ECS funding, I think, is a good place to start to try to get money back into our classrooms.
We have a caller who I don't think is a stranger to this program. Good evening, caller. Welcome to CityViews.
Yes, good evening, Sam. I'd like to comment on the recent decision by the Historic Commission about giving up on the preservation of the mission-style building on the Kelly property.
Go ahead.
I totally disagree with that. I think if you could just bear with me, I'll probably jump around a little. But in Torrington, we remember that the train station was demolished for the same reason they stated for the mission-style building. And if you go back a little further, in the historic district entering Torrington, coming down East Main Street, the Tatey building was taken down, and it was in the historic building district. And if you go down the south end of Torrington, there was a pure 18th century home there down around the Carvel area that was demolished about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then if you go back even like 20 years, if you recall, there was a study done by a research commission about how to revitalize some of the areas of Torrington, and Upper Water Street was selected as an entertainment area of Torrington that should be developed. Now we have no train station up there. The Mission building is going to be knocked down. We lost a very historic building with the Tatey building. We've lost the 18th century building down the south end of Torrington, and it's just a continuation of this. And it baffles me how a historic commission could let historic buildings be demolished. And even the city, even over the years, should have even gone through eminent domain and taken over the Kelly property, developed the train station, developed that Mission area, put an entertainment center in there, put a park in there, and revitalize some of Torrington, because in the 30 years that I've been aware of downtown Torrington revitalization, nothing has been done, and I think it's within the realm of possibility. In our lifetimes, we'll never see a revitalization of downtown Torrington. Well, all that money that was invested could have been put in an area to develop through the city and through private corporations that area. But I really, and I'm going to sound a little sarcastic here, but if that historic commission and even the chairperson of the historic town there next to the city hall, the building there, if they continue on this vein, what are we going to have left in Torrington of a historical nature? And it's their responsibility to represent the city of the people of Torrington and defend these historical buildings. And here's the sarcastic end of it. If they can't do that, they really should resign and let someone else take their place to do this, because once that Mission building is gone, you're never going to replace it. And then if that building's gone, you could maybe start, what else you could begin to rip down? Something else maybe of historical nature could be ripped down. And I think it's a very heavy impact on the development of downtown Torrington, because with all these buildings gone, what do you have to come to Torrington to see? And that's basically my point of view.
Well, I agree with a lot of what you said, and I'm gonna maybe Dan's got something to comment about on that as well. But my only observation would be this: that somebody just didn't turn around yesterday and see that either the old railroad building or the Spanish-style garage was in a state of disrepair and may have gone beyond the point where it can be repaired or restored. But people have been looking at that for years, and but no one has stepped forward with the money, or the ambition to go look at the money to try to preserve those things. And I never heard a great outcry from the community until they were actually destroyed. Those aren't the only two buildings we've lost, as you pointed out. I mean, we've probably lost hundreds of buildings that could have been restored over the last 50 years, but they were allowed to deteriorate because nobody had any interest in restoring them. But I think you bring out a good point, that maybe it shouldn't be just on the arms of the historical society. Maybe it's time for the city to look at a more active historical preservation commission to identify these buildings and try to find funds to preserve them.
I agree 100% with something like that, because once they're gone, like you're saying, they're gone, and there's no bringing them back. And it's the history of Torrington. It's the personality, the profile of Torrington in itself and the people, the multi-ethnic groups of people that have come to Torrington and lived in Torrington.
Jerry,
and that bit of history is gone. It's like when you lose a parent. There goes your library, your resource, your ties to everything.
Well, thank you, caller, for that observation. Dan, do you have anything to comment on that issue?
Well, I would agree. I mean, and I agree with what you said as well. The historic beauty of a city should be maintained, and I know that Torrington has a unique history, and it's got some wonderful architecture in town. You know, it's a shame that the buildings are destroyed that way. But again, you know, before it happens, maybe there should be some sort of a notice that the town has put on, and opportunities given for people to step up to help preserve those buildings, and that can all be part of economic redevelopment of the downtown area. You know, I mean, those buildings are important to the history of
yeah, and again, a lot of that goes back to public interest and leadership. We've only got about 3 minutes left, and we do have one call that I'm going to try to take. Good evening, caller. Welcome to CityViews. We've only got 3 minutes left, so make your comment or question brief.
You know what? I agree with the guy that just called. I think it's great that he talked about that. And there is a lot of historical places. But I even got an old home, an old Victorian home. I think it's historical. You know, there's a lot of, what about, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Obadi, the sculptor, that they wanted to give the city of Torrington the place up on Highland Avenue.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Where the Lions. I remember the Lions when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, actually, I even went to a sculptor class with him. That I think the city put in, that he was, you know, the sculptor of the town, and he, you know, gave us a class. And I used to have the clay. And I just gave it to a buddy of mine. But he's an artist. I'm not an artist.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is there is a lot of historical things I wanted to know, and I would like to know what's going on with Torrington Company, with the court system and everything else.
Well, those are all good questions, and we don't have very much time to address them tonight. And if I did, I don't know if I've got the answers to them.
Hopefully you think about it and talk about it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your call.
Bye-bye.
Well, we're down to our last couple of minutes here, Dan. Is there something that you want to say we haven't had a chance to get to this evening?
Well, you know, all I want to say is that I hope the people in Torrington will give me an opportunity. I want to bring my business experience to Hartford to try to make a difference in our communities here. I'm a down-to-earth, real person. I've got backgrounds that are similar to people across this entire district. I've lived here my entire life. And all I want to do is to work in the best interest of all of our communities for a future generation, so that our kids and grandkids can live in the towns that they grew up in and earn a living wage. And that's the bottom line. That's why I'm in this.
Well, thank you for being here tonight. We certainly wish you a lot of luck.
Okay, well, thank you.
And we're looking forward to see all of our viewers again next week. Until then, good night, Torrington.